from that short break from our newsroom. Now I've got another a gentleman in Nigeria and a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, an activist before becoming a politician. And well, it's going to tell us if the activism in him has given way to the politician in him now. Joining me, the pleasure here live from our North London studio is Senator Shehu Sani from Kaduna Central. Senator, thank you for being part of the program today. Welcome from Nigeria.
Thank you.
How was your trip?
It's fine.
How did you leave Nigeria? What was the state as of the time you were leaving Nigeria?
Well, I left Nigeria when the president was in Washington for the nuclear summit. And I left Nigeria, people suffering from epileptic power supply and very long queues at the fuel station. And that was how I left Nigeria.
You're talking like an activist.
Well, I will always be an activist, and that was what I was known with. And despite being now a senator, many people still don't call me senator, they call me Comrade Shehu Sani, and I'm very much comfortable with that very name.
So what's the difference between Comrade Shehu Sani and Senator Shehu Sani?
Well, the difference is not about me, it is about the very principles and standards and platforms which I represent.
Has anything changed?
As an activist and also as a senator. As an activist, you fight for certain principles and certain standards, and you are guided by those very standards. And you speak out in clear reflection and portrayal of that very standards. But as a senator being elected, you are bound to represent those people who voted you into power. And you also have to balance the interests of your people and the position of your party and also the very institution which you represent. And but as an activist, you are free from those encumbrances, and you speak out clearly based on the very principles which you believe in, which you stand for.
What ideology shaped your movement from Comrade Shehu Sani into Senator Shehu Sani, APC Senator for Kaduna Central? Was there a particular ideology you were portrayed or that determined which camp you were going to fall into?
Historically, I come from a political movement. We were the pioneers of civil rights activism in Nigeria. As student union activists in the 80s and the early 90s, we were propelled by the need to free our country from military dictatorship. And in that very process, we set up human rights organizations to challenge the military, to conscientize, sensitize people, and mobilize them against military dictatorship. And that was the founding basis for our thoughts, our views, and our contribution to liberating our country. And when democracy was restored in 1999, many of us were in prison at that time. So when we came out of prison, we never thought of getting involved because we thought the political process is not going to last. And that there was this belief, which was proffered by the late Gani Fahimi, that we shouldn't be part of those politicians in terms of we shouldn't contest, and that until certain conditions were met. And then we lost out in 1999. Many of those who never struggled, who never paid any price for democracy, took opportunity and found themselves in power. And from 1999, though there were people like Aswaju Bola Tinubu who disagreed with Gani, and then they went into AD and contested and won. By 2003, I made up my mind that I'm going to contest the Senate, but I lost because my party that time, the Alliance for Democracy in Kaduna, was not very strong. And then I did my best, I couldn't win. And then I contested in 2011 under CPC, and again I lost the primary elections, and then in 2015 I contested and won. So I was moved by the very fact that we need to get involved, and things are getting bad, and that the political class who took over power from 1999 have not been able to lead us to the promised land. And I thought that we should now get involved and take the mantle of leadership and see to it that those very issues which we continuously raise over the years have been addressed. Issues that have to do with restructuring of our country through federalism, providing social services for our people, and strengthening our unity as a country, and pursuing all those noble ideals, I believe, cannot be realized if we don't take over political power. And that propelled my interest in joining politics, and also which led to the success in 2015 election. And now I represent the very place which I come from, Kaduna Central.
Is this ideology in consonance or at variance with that of your party? Are you at home? Do you feel talk like an activist? Do you feel very much at home, considering your ideological background and your party political?
Well, if you go a bit backwards and prop the basis for the emergence of the APC. The APC is not a communist party. There is virtually no ideology. We were brought together, people from different political backgrounds, from the AACN, from the MPP, from the CPC, and from the PDP. We were united by a common ideals, which is to restore order, sanity, and glory and pride of our country. And we were also united by the common need to evict the PDP and eject Jonathan out of power. But now, having us coming from different background, our differences come into the open now after we have won elections. And with then the fact that we have done with the common enemy, now our individual colors come into being. And there were people who come from the PDP, and now in APC, and there are people who come from the ACN and the MPP and CPC. And people like me come from the CPC, but before then I have been an activist. I still consider myself an activist. Certainly we can't be the same. I have my views on issues, and I have my own beliefs on certain issues, which is not in tandem with some members of our party. And I believe it's natural. A political party is not a court organization where you are not allowed to speak your mind. I should speak my mind. If the party is wrong, I will say it is wrong. And if any member of our party goes wrong, I will also say it's very wrong. And what matters most to me is that what you say, whether it is right or wrong. We cannot evict the PDP out of power, and then we don't live true to ourselves. So I think in every respect, there are people who we don't share anything in common other than only sharing the same political party. Yes.
Does that give the background to your outspokenness in the party and the threat of, or not even the threat, of your suspension?
Well, naturally, I don't see anything that would stop me from expressing my opinion. If I can speak under the military and go to prison for it.
You were actually charged for treason?
Of course, I was charged for treason and jailed for life imprisonment for mobilizing against the military. If I can do that, and I also, when I was in prison, in Kirikiri prison and later in Port Harcourt prison and in Abba prison, I never stopped speaking because I've been writing articles, and that made it impossible for me to have any reprieve even when in prison. So if I can do that, there is no reason why I can't speak of my mind. I come from a state with a governor who, in all intent, come from the political right, and I come from the political left. And then we don't share our views on how the society's problem could be addressed. And he is from the political right, the capitalistic style, and then I am from the left, and I come from a parental background that have affinity to the NEPU and PRP of Malam Amini Kano. And it's still inside my DNA, and my also shapes my both national and global views on issues. So naturally, when people have that kind of differences in background, there are bound to be clashes. So, and the only way for them to feel they can silence me from the state level is to play with the idea of suspension, which they purportedly did, but which the National Secretariat declared it null and void. So as far as I'm concerned, not suspension, not expulsion will ever stop me from speaking out my mind. None at all. There's none.
So who controls APC in Kaduna State, the leftist or the rightist?
Well, now we have a crisis in the state because, first of all, the person who won the state chairmanship of the party is not recognized by the establishment in the state. So they have a stooge whom they consider as their own chairman of the party. And those very elements who contributed to building the party in the state were institutionally marginalized out of the system. And just go to the grassroots in Kaduna and ask people who contributed to seeing the parties in power. 9 out of 10 will admit to you that there's crisis. All those very elements who contributed to bringing about the government in the state were marginalized out of government. So as far as many people are concerned on the grassroots, that there are problems in the party. And that made it possible for the opposition party, who thought that they will not be moving freely on the street in the last after the last election, now to be even moving on the street and even saying so many things on the media, local media. It clearly shows the problem. But I think the problem is also not about just the party, but the government of the state also had problems with the labor. It has with workers, it has with religious leaders, it has with politicians. So you can see the myriad of problems in the state. But we hope that we are doing everything possible to work it out so that this doesn't affect the fortunes of our party in 2019. Because if we if we move towards 2019 with a divided house, certainly we're going to face a very big problem.
The current governor of Kaduna State, Governor Malam El-Rufai, has accused you on so many fronts, one of which was insincerity to the party and to President Muhammadu Buhari. Guilty.
It is funny for a governor to accuse me of insincerity to the party.
And to the president.
I don't know how I have ever been insincere to the president. Nobody is as pro Buhari as I have always been in Kaduna. The governor was in PDP. Out of the 16 years, he was there for the last 12 years of the party. So he was a latter-day convert for Buhari. I've been a Buhari even before he thought of Buhari, even when he thought Buhari was an old man that doesn't deserve to be a president of Nigeria. So you can see it's a letter. And secondly, there is no reason for me to be anti-Buhari, because all that Buhari has done is something which I have consistently support. And I say he is the one who is anti-Buhari because he has scheming to be president in 2019. There is no doubt about it. The issues are very clear on the ground. And all that I want him to do is to say, the governor of Kaduna State, I'm never interested in 2019. I'm supporting Buhari for 2019. And then I will publicly apologize and say, oh, I'm sorry. But it's something which he has not done up to this very time here. So I think I'm more Buhari than any other person is, for a number of reasons. First of all, is that when Buhari came into office, he publicly declared his asset, which I also followed suit. And you can also see that how many of them that are Buhari today can come out and speak on defense of him. Governor of Ekiti State, Fayoshe, has consistently been attacking Buhari on pages of newspapers and the media. And I expect someone like Kaduna State Governor to also respond to him, who is his colleague. But you don't hear anything like this. And then again, you see the very fact that whatever Buhari is trying to do, the governor moves to the state and rushes it. The TSA was Buhari's idea. Before Buhari does it, he rushed to Kaduna to do it. The verification exercise of ghost workers was Buhari's idea. Before Buhari does it, he rushed to do it. And there is this National Economic Summit which Buhari is about to do. The governor rushes to Kaduna and do it. And feeding program for children in primary school is Buhari's idea. Before Buhari does it, he rushed to do it. And the image being given to everybody is that Buhari is doing what the governor of Kaduna State is doing. So I have no reason to be anti-Buhari because I'm not contesting for the presidency of Nigeria. And I'm not interested in that. I simply want to serve my people. And I have consistently supported him. You know, we're in a situation whereby people use the name of Buhari to fight their battles. When instead of you to face me, I face you, as it is been said. So when you cannot face me, what you need to do is to put a mask of Buhari in your face so that the public will say this is the person who this person is fighting. But in all sense, Buhari is doing a wonderfully good job for Nigeria.
Are you convinced that the president is doing a wonderfully good job for Nigeria? You just said that you left Nigeria in some not too good state. Are you convinced as an activist that the president is doing a good job?
Yeah.
You look into the camera.
The issue which I have raised, which I have said, is that we have problem with power and we have problem with long queues. But those are temporary issues that will certainly be addressed. When we took over power in 2015, we know the state of Nigeria at that time. It was a raped, looted, vandalized nation. People have lost confidence and have lost hopes in governance, and then he was able to bestow our dignity and pride both nationally and internationally. We are now seen with some measure comparatively of respect globally. And the problems we are facing of power, on fuel, are issues which I believe there is still time which we will address. The economy is facing serious problems, but we should understand that the solution to it is certainly not palliative measure. It's about how we can diversify our economy. We have for over 4 decades depends on oil revenue, and this is a day of reckoning. It's a moment of truth. We simply have to diversify. Saudi Arabia is appropriating about $2 trillion to diversify its economy in a post-oil era. And I think this is what we should look at it. We should look at it and start working on it, and I think Buhari is certainly doing that. But it's not something, diversifying the economy is not like planting a seed today and reap tomorrow. It takes time to do. So I firmly believe Buhari has sent a clear message that Nigeria is on the path to sanity now. Our monies have been recovered, and a clear message is sent for those who are out of government and in government, that the government now will not in any way tolerate, accept, or endorse any corrupt practices. And this has always been our major problem. And when he took over, a chunk of our country has been taken over by insurgents, hosting flags and unleashing their own brand of Islamic rule. But he has been able to send them out of it, and then confidence is restored that we now have a government that is in power, that is also in control of the levers of power.
Okay. I've got Yinka on the line. Good morning, Yinka.
So today, Alabi, I am very proud of you this morning. You have the best. This is the big fish we are looking for, and this is the golden fish that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Let me go to my question, and I want Senator to please answer these questions very, very fast. Let me start from the rear about the Chibok girls. Please, Senator, I want you to tell the rest of the world, are these girls missing? And how can we work with the government in bringing these girls back to their respective parents? As an activist, now you are a politician. Why is all the time that senators in Abuja always fight with their state governor in order to use the federal might to take over the state after we got the election? What can you say about Asiwaju Ahmed Tinubu in Nigerian politics? The role of Kano the Biafra man, the roles of federal government in dealing with this man. What can you say about this, sir?
All right, you're taking too many questions.
Please answer it.
All right, thank you, Yinka.
All right, I will answer you in categories. The first one is that the Chibok girls are alive and they are still in the custody of the insurgents. And it is not a fiction that over 200 girls were kidnapped by the insurgents. And there were 3 attempts to get these girls out of captivity. The first one was the one in which, though the first 2 ones were not directly about the girls, it was about trying to negotiate a ceasefire, which failed. The Obasanjo's intervention in 2011, which I facilitated talks, and then the Dr. Detti Ahmed from Kano, the president of Supreme Council of Sharia, which also the talk was sabotaged. And there was an attempt in 2014 to reach a deal with the insurgents, which I was part of, which also include the involvement of international organizations. But somewhere along the line, there was problems because the insurgents demanded and submitted a list of their own members. They wanted them to be released. And the government agreed, but on the last minute of the exchange, the government changed its mind based on security reports that the names being given, whom are all 18 people, were people whom the government cannot release, and that talk was brought to the end. And I know a freelance journalist, Ahmed Salkida, has done a wonderfully good job. If some of the ideas which he proffered were adhered to, certainly we could have get the girls out of detention. But the issue is that when you come to negotiation which are made of mind, certainly a lot of things will not work through. If the insurgents say they need their members to be released, and then if you are not ready to release them, certainly there will be no deal at all. So I think this is where we have always had a stop. Security reports have always been against releasing insurgents in exchange for the girls, and that has always been the crisis in that point. And then secondly, about people in Abuja fighting with state governors, I don't know for that. And when you see such fights happen, it's not about Abuja, it's about local issues happening, and then now coming to the national level. And in my own case, I am not fighting with my governor. I also raise issues on these are things which I believe should be done, and then he said such things should not be done, and then it's been interpreted as a fight. And for anybody who knows me, I've always aired my view, and that has not always been when I have a governor who is now in APC. I've always spoken out. From 1999, I've spoken out. Before 1999, in the 80s, in the 90s, I've spoken out against injustice, against tyranny, and against things that are wrong. So it is simply part of myself to speak out. And then you talk of Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu. I think it's one Nigerian we should all be very grateful to have. He wasn't just a politician, but he was part and parcel of the struggle for democracy. As a leading member of NADECO, we were the leaders of the campaign for democracy. We were the ones who ejected the military out of power. We were the ones who brought democracy back to Nigeria. And our democracy was not a gift given to us by the military. It was also not a lottery that we won. There were people that were killed for it, people were exiled for it, people were jailed for it. Aswaju happened to be one of those who suffered persecution in the struggle for democracy. And also, he was also one of those who refused to bow down to the antics of the PDP under the former Baba Obasanjo. And then he stood firm. He became the last man standing. And we can also see that the change in 2015 could largely be attributed to his skill, his strategy, his determination, his commitment, and his contribution to bringing an end to PDP's rule in Nigeria. So he is someone that we will always be grateful to as a freedom fighter who brought Nigeria back to the path of prosperity. And I cannot remember the last issues which you raised, but if you can you remember?
No.
Okay.
I certainly was raising too many questions at the time.
Okay. So I think
I've got another caller on the line. I've got Ade. Ade, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Ade.
Senator Sani Namakamalaba.
Barka Kadi.
I want to ask you a question.
Ade, can you speak out a little bit more?
Okay. I want to ask Senator Sani these two quick questions. I am from Kaduna State. I want to ask Senator Sani, what is the government doing about this bypass express, Kaduna bypass? That is the one exiting from Nigeria Air Force Base, heading towards Kaduna Abuja Junction. You know, and I know very well that road is really bad. I think that road was constructed by Babangida, and government have come and go, and that expressway has been neglected. Do you think this government of Buhari, who is from Kaduna State, a Kaduna man, can do something about that Kaduna bypass? Because obviously most of the government officials who pass there.
Can I ask you to go to the next question?
Private ship. They don't care about that road. My second quick question is this: regarding the L5 thing about religion. Do you think L5 should just calm down at the moment? Because we know what happened in Kaduna State. When Shehu was being introduced by a politician, your colleague, which is Sani in the Senate again, the former governor of Kaduna State. By just, we didn't take it serious in Kaduna State. When people went to Military Square to rally and said, no, we don't want Sharia, because already Sharia is in Kaduna State Constitution. But because Sani brought one kind of political Sharia, and you know,
Adi, I'm sorry, you've got the question. I need to let you go now so that I can answer the question. Go ahead, sir.
First of all, about the Western bypass, I as a senator representing Kaduna Central, I included it as one of those areas that will be addressed in the 2016 budget, and I'm also taking it up with the chairman of the Senate Committee on Works, Kabir Gaya. So I assure you that in 2016 budget, once it is faithfully implemented, that very road will be addressed. That is one. Secondly, on Kaduna Religious Bill. Well, the governor is right in saying that there have been a lot of crises in Kaduna, religious crisis, and there is a need to address that very issue. But where he became wrong is the law which he is working at. And I faulted the law in a number of respects. First of all, the law violates the constitutional rights of Nigerians to freely belong to any religious group and also profess and preach any religion of their choice. In the sense that he arrogated for himself the right to issue license for people who are going to preach, which is very wrong. And secondly, he gave the Jamaatul Islam and the Christian Association of Nigeria, which are all non-governmental organizations, certain powers of determining who should preach and who should not. as a citizen of a country, I can decide to preach any religion I want to, and belong to any mosque or any church or any organization I want to, and I can decide to be a member or not to be a member of any organization, and that law clearly violates that. And then another thing which the law did was simply to force state religion on people by saying major religion, which are Islam and Christianity, and I think that is against what the Constitution. There's nothing like major religion in our Constitution. So what they are trying to do with that bill is simply to issue license for preachers that are certainly going to be pro-government, pro-establishment, and people that are known to be critical of government certainly would not have license to preach. And what that law is trying to do is simply to clamp down not only on freedom of religion but freedom of speech. And the tower of tyranny is built with regulations, with prohibitions, with restrictions, and then with such kind of limitations. So if you can justify issuing license for people to preach, I think you should know it also that we will soon have license for people to post their comments on Facebook and Twitter, because there are enough laws on the ground now to deal with defamation, to deal with libel, to deal with incitement, and we don't need such kind of laws. And that law will certainly not pass the scrutiny of the law. And I believe that he does it with a certain motive, the very fact that he wants to shut the mouth of some of these preachers who have been very critical of issues. I have always been a critic all my life. This is the first time I've been in government. But it would be morally wrong for me to oppose anybody critical of government. And I believe that people should be, the pulpit is not simply a place for preaching the word of God. It is also a place for reflecting the realities of our society. And we can't spend so many years criticizing government, and when we find ourselves, we want to shut people up. People must be able to speak out, to criticize us. And the years back, we were used to throwing missiles. Now it's time for us to receive them. He should have no fear of criticisms. He should be ready to take it. That is what democracy, we are a democratic state. The rights of the people to express themselves, to associate and assemble, and choose and decide for the religion of them what they want to do is a fundamental right, and should not be regulated in any way. And we have laws. If you use your platform as a preacher to incite people, there are enough laws to prosecute you. That should be taken into consideration. And I'm 100% opposed to that law. But I believe that our own religious leaders should do enough to be able not to use such platform to incite people. And as such, I've said it in the interviews which I granted, that law is going to cause problems, because nobody will stop preaching because of a law. They will preach. If you will arrest them, you can arrest them, but nothing is going to stop people from preaching the word of God.
Okay, all right. I don't know if I've got another caller in there. All right, in the absence of any other caller, I see I've calls waiting, but I'm afraid I've got no time to take any more call as I need to go now. It's been a pleasure having Senator Shehu Sani, Senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, representing Kaduna Central, join us on the show today. Thank you so much for being part of the program.
I appreciate it.
What's the way forward for Nigeria? Your last take on the show.
The way forward for Nigeria is first of all, for us to really understand that we have inherited a lot of problems, and there's a need to be patient with the president and the government while things are being worked at.
The president said he's got 4 years. Is it truly 4 years? More?
When you are
got that time,
when you are in power in a democratic setting, you have at least 2.5 years to spend in power. The rest years, you start seeing posters and people contesting for what you have been holding. So I think we have technically we have 4 years, but
in reality,
we have 2.5 years to spend in power.
And he spent 10 months out of the 2.5 years.
Well, like they have said, we are not magicians, but a lot of things will certainly be done. I believe in Buhari, and I believe that he will restore the glory for our country.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Senator Shehu Sani, Senator Federal Republic of Nigeria, representing Kaduna Central on the show today. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming. Wish you a safe journey back to Nigeria.
Thank you.
My name is Tudi Alabi. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Weapons. They can be used in dirty bombs, which raises a whole host of issues if they get into the hands of non-state actors.
The wheelbarrow theory of human utility is like this. The wheelbarrow is